Hey everyone, welcome back. This video will be all about how to shoot 360 VR panorama images from your drone. I'll take you through 5 key essential things to consider when shooting 360 panos. For this, you will need a Phantom 4 Pro or later model, which includes the 360 pano modes in the camera settings of your DJI Go 4 app. Now, there is a manual way of shooting this which requires you to physically move the drone around in the air, capturing all aspects of the sphere correctly, and with at least 30% overlap of each image, so then you're able to stitch this together later. Now, I won't go over this in this video as it has somewhat become redundant. The automatic pano modes in the DJI Go 4 app does this for you. Now, there is one thing you need to consider when shooting VR 360 images, and that is you are shooting in a 3D virtual space, not a flat conventional 2D image. You need to get your head around this first before you proceed on to the next steps. The VR world is very different, and you're essentially shooting a series of flat images and then turning that into a virtual reality space. Like small pieces of orange peel, I guess, laid out flat and then put back together to form a round sphere. Think of it that way. Okay, the shooting process is fairly straightforward if you use the DJI Pano mode. However, there is still a couple of things you need to be aware of when shooting to make sure when you start the editing, you don't run into any kind of color or stitching issues. First thing to consider is drone position. Firstly, you need to work out where your drone needs to be before you capture the pano. If you're shooting real estate, the best practice is not to be directly above the property, as you'll soon work out that from a user perspective, when you're viewing the 360 pano, you have to move the image around to see the property, and most viewers might not look straight down. Now, if you do look straight down, you're only going to see the roof of this property also. When you look directly down, this is also where some of the stitching errors can occur, so it's best to avoid bringing this to their attention. What works well is if you position the subject or property roughly in front of you or in the lower thirds of the frame. Also try and include something else in the other part of the frame, such as a sunset or a point of interest or a proposed building or structure that might be rendered in later. So here's an example of a proposed rail corridor we created for visualization. JPEG or RAW. Once you take off, get to the position where you want to capture your 360 pano, switch over to your camera settings to capture JPEGs. Now, unless you have a very powerful computer at home and you want to go that extra mile shooting RAWs, by all means, go for it. But what you need to consider is that one RAW image is around 40 megabytes, and the panorama usually takes about 34 images, which comes to 1.3 to 1.5 gigs in total, not even taking into consideration the size after you process in Lightroom or Photoshop or PT GUI. You're dealing with massive files. JPEGs are totally fine, and you can still color correct them in post. Camera settings. Next step is to manually set the camera settings. Now, do not select auto, aperture, or shutter priority, or auto white balance. If you stitch these shots together in post, your exposure and white balance on individual images are going to be completely out of sync with the whole shot, and you will have serious issues trying to fix this later. So, how do we do this? Now, when you're in the air, you need to move your drone around to the darkest part of your image and also to the brightest part. Now, what you need to be looking for is a way you can manually set the camera settings that is somewhat in the middle and workable for both the dark and the bright end. So you're essentially trying to work out global settings. I like to go straight to the bright part and start dialing down the settings until the colors of the sky starts to come through. Then I spin the drone around to the dark part, which is usually the ground. And if it's too dark, I slowly start to adjust the aperture or shutter to fix this. Then I spin back around again to the bright part and make sure the bright part is okay and not overexposed. Now, once I'm happy with the global settings that I know I can work with, then I'm ready to start the pano. When you're ready to capture, get the first frame where you want your hero shot to be and simply hit that shutter button. It'll take over from there and shoot around 34 images. Once it's done, it'll let you know, and that is essentially it. So, in summary, running over the 5 key steps to capturing a great 360 VR pano are as follows. First one, drone position. Number 2, If manually shooting, allow 30% overlap at least. Number 3, JPEGs only. Number 4, manually set the camera settings, nothing in auto please. And number 5, manually set white balance to sunny or cloudy. If you want to know how to stitch this panorama and also learn how to use drones for the real estate industry, make sure you check out dronemasterclassacademy.com, where you'll learn how to shoot, edit, and fly like a pro. Description below. I will see you guys in the next one.